Welcome back, my fellow renegades. Welcome back to another Renegade Society radio show. I am your host today, Amanda. And before we jump in to everything today, I have a very amazing guest that I'm super excited to be chatting games with and a bunch of cool stuff. But before we get to that, I wanted to let you all know that we do have the Alice is Missing RPG out now. So you can get that at your friendly local game store or online at the Renegade Game Studios web store. We also have pre-orders available for Altered Carbon, the RPG, which if you are a fan of the show, you need to check out this RPG. It's so exciting. I personally love sci-fi and cyberpunk and all that good stuff. So I'm super excited for Altered Carbon, which will be coming out soon. So make sure you pre-order that if you're into it. And we also have the Duel of Wands Kids on Broom card game. That game is designed by Luke Minch and Doug Lewandowski with art by Heather Vaughn. This art is also so amazing. I'm so excited. You can actually play this game as a standalone game, but you can also play it with the Kids on Brooms RPG. And the cool thing about that is that it's actually used in the game to resolve conflicts. So you have a duel of wands to figure out who is in the right in some of those situations when you can't resolve it in another way, which I love. Other than that, we do have some content still coming your way. So we do have our More Phenomenal Mondays with Daddy Louie still going on a little bit, but just a reminder that we are taking a break for the holidays. So that'll be going on for the next 2 weeks. So if you are not sure, you can always check in with us on Twitch, on YouTube to check in on the schedule. But really what we're going to have going on is we're going to have some fun content being shared on our socials, which you definitely need to check out. And we will be back after the holiday break everywhere else. So still make sure you're following us, subscribe, you have all the notifications on so that you don't miss our new Renegade content in January. And we're going to be doing a giveaway today for a copy of Lanterns Harvest Festival, which this is an amazing game and it's very special to my heart because it's designed by Chris Chung, who is also Canadian and over here with us. And Lanterns was actually also play tested here in Toronto. So it's very exciting. I have friends that actually play tested that game, so I love it. So the code word for that will be given away later in the stream. So just make sure you have your ears open for that. And then keep an eye out for the link in the chat, which Desiree will be sharing with you. Before we get on here, I am going to welcome my guest, Danny. Welcome, Danny. Danny Plays Games. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Of course. When you reached out to me, I was so excited. So
thanks. Awesome. Awesome. And if you want to just tell everyone here a little bit more about who you are, what you do, and where we can find both you and your work online, that would be awesome. People need
to. People need to. Nah. My name's Danny. I run a Twitter community called Danny Plays Games. First and foremost, I'm just a board game enthusiast. Like I just love board gaming and tabletop gaming. I guess I'm considered a content creator. I've kind of run the gambit of like being just like an enthusiast into a content creator into working within the industry. So I have kind of a insight on all different angles of board gaming and tabletop gaming. But yeah, you can find me all over the place at Danny Plays Games with a Z. Someone had taken Danny Plays Games with an S, but turns out Danny Plays Games with a Z is better for SEO. So, hey, you can find me easier that way. I've been on TikTok more, trying to figure out all that good stuff. I'm also a co-host of Variable Player Power, which is a queer board game and pop culture podcast. And I'm also a player on Off the Table, which is a team that streams indie tabletop RPGs, and I'm in a Monster of the Week campaign. So yeah, I'm all over the place on the internet.
I love that. I love Monster of the Week. That's super fun.
So good.
Yeah.
So good.
That's amazing. Well, so you do so many things, really, and people should definitely check you out on Twitter. I love your Twitter feed. It's just always like giving me such good feels over there. And there's also, lately you were posting, what was it? You had like a bunch of things people were sharing with you, their dice. And so I was just going on there and being like, look at all this, look at all these beautiful pictures of dice. I was enjoying it.
Yeah, yeah, it's so cool. I mean, I always tell people like board gaming is kind of what brings us together, but the
Mm,
community that is built around it is amazing. All the people and it's something as simple as dice. Like we can gawk over each other's dice and hype each
yeah.
other up just by seeing each other's dice, and it's so cool.
So true. And it's so interesting that you say that because I always think of board gaming as being like it's like you come to the community for the games, but you really stay for the people,
Yeah,
which
for
is
sure.
so awesome. I feel like no other hobby is like that. I've still never experienced another hobby where I'm like, "Oh, I came here for this like thing that I do, but I'm just going to actually stick around no matter what because you're cool and I like you and I want to play games with you." Only
Right.
in tabletop gaming do you get that.
I
So
completely
that's
agree.
yeah. So that's really cool. So what first drew you to board games? When did that start for you? And when did you like become obsessed? What was that like?
Yes, so I definitely grew up a gamer. So I'm a first generation born here in America from immigrant parents from Vietnam. And growing up, just gaming in general, video gaming and board gaming, that was kind of how one, we hung out together as a generation, multi-generational family living in one place. But also like that's kind of how I connected with other families and kids in the community as well. So growing up, gaming has always been kind of center around just what we do. And then going through just kind of the basic mass market games as kids. And then in college, like we would play like Catan and Betrayal. And again, still kind of like into the hobby, but, just casually playing because, of course, in college, we're exploring and, homework or what, I don't know, whatever
Yeah.
we do in college and so
It's
on.
so funny. Everyone always talks about the college experience like that too. They're like, in college, I played some games, but then I was also busy because I was in college. So, so I feel you. I feel you.
Yeah, and it wasn't until probably about 4 or 5 years ago. It's when I moved down to Florida. It was that my first time. I grew up in Georgia, and I moved down to Florida for my job. And it was the first time I was away from my family. So during my birthday, my brother was like, "Hey, I know you like games. I found a local gaming store." Him thinking it was a just like a video game store. Turns out I lived like 20 minutes away from a Cool Stuff Games, which is like,
Awesome.
yeah, the huge gaming store, board gaming store down here. So he sent me some money and I drove to this store. I had never heard of it before. And I walk in and unbeknownst to me, I was like, wait, where are the video games at? Like what's going on? Um, so I walk in and of course I see all the Magic and all the Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh stuff and then a wall of board games. And I was like, wow, some of these look really cool. And it was then where I used the gift card. It was a pretty generous gift card. So I bought Takanoko, I bought Potion Explosion and Lanterns, actually. Lanterns was the other one. And that was kind of my first foray into board gaming. I had no clue what these games were, so I went home and I YouTubed these
Like, what is
games.
this? Yeah.
What is this, right? And of course, I found Rodney's Takanoko tutorial from,
Awesome.
and it was just one of those things where I was just like, wow, like board gaming has, I guess, evolved, or like I was so involved in like playing Smash Bros that I completely didn't know how board gaming had evolved. And
Mhm.
yeah, that was my head first dive into figuring out like, oh, board gaming, like you can have thematic mechanics that work within strategy and like their set collection and tile laying, and
Mhm.
Takanoko has all those little factors. You can roll the dice for the weather, and you're building these patterns and you're
Yeah.
you're collecting these bamboo shoots and you're moving things. So that was kind of like my moment of like, wow, if this one game can do all that, like what else can it do? And yeah, I just fell headfirst in. Living that close to a board gaming store was I guess good and bad. Bad for the wallet, but good for falling in love with the hobby. And yeah, I just started doing research, and that's kind of how I got started into just playing. And I became that guy at work where I would be taking these games. Like I would always have games in my car anytime we went to a bar or over to a friend's house, I would always have a bag of games like, oh, I found this new one. Let's play this one. So yeah, that I became that game guy and then just dove headfirst. Not having a really built community since I was relatively new to Florida, that's kind of when I went towards social media. And yeah, that's kind of where the social media content creation started.
That's really cool. I love that. And I love when you're that guy, because I am also that guy who has just games all the time. And when I'm on like lunch break, like I'm the person that when I'm at my day job and I'm like on lunch, back when it's safe for us to be near people, I always will be playing a game with someone and people are always just like, what are you doing over here? Like every break, I'm like 20-minute game, let's just go, like bing, bang, boom. So I feel that. Also, all of those games, it's so interesting that you said like Takonoko, Potion Explosion, and Lanterns, because all of those games are very visually stunning.
Mm-hmm.
So do you find that that's something you tend to gravitate towards? And how do you feel about like the visuals of a game and sort of where that falls into a game's, I guess, reception and importance almost of the visuals in a game?
Yeah, I fall in love with games that have, I guess some people might call them overproduced games, like you could, but I love games with nice components, games that kind of go that extra step to bring you into the theme. And I think it's super important, right? Because games can be seen as art as well. And there's a lot of artists, graphic designers, and people that work behind the scenes to make these games beautiful. So that's definitely something that I gravitate towards. Anything with heavy theme and nice components, even if they're not needed, like, metal coins instead of cardboard coins, or like, that the marble machine in Potion Explosion, like who needs to make right, like who needs to craft that out of cardboard? But it was there, and it just adds that little bit more magic into the gameplay.
I actually think too, like, because I think there is I think in the new Potion Explosion, they even like give you one that's already like made.
Yeah, the plastic one, right?
The plastic one. And I actually feel bad for people to get the plastic one, because for me, building that thing was like a whole experience. And I'm just like, I mean, that's great because it's a lot easier and it's quicker to set up and it's just less of a time. But I'm like, I love the overproduced, like, paper like tray you built out of this cardboard, and you're like, this goes here, and I gotta, because it's so satisfying once you first set that up, and then you're like, oh, we're gonna play right now. Right. Like I love that feeling in Potion Explosion. Yeah. I'm a huge Potion Explosion like obsessed, like to the point that when I first played that game, I mean, I still have the app on my phone and I play it like all the time, like competitively, to the point that it's a problem when I play with someone that's new, because I have to like tone it back because I'm too competitive with it. So I feel you. And yeah, all three of those games are also very thematic, which is interesting because I do think that, like you said, the visuals kind of are interwoven usually with the theme. So when you have a game that is very visually appealing, it usually means, oh, there's something else going on here. Like there's a story to this game. Right. And there's like mechanics that are interwoven with the visuals, that are interwoven with like what you're actually doing. So it's like, in something like in Lanterns, even, we're like laying out these lanterns and like dedicating them to people as part of a festival. And I just think, I'm like, that makes sense to me why I'm putting this here, and the idea of dedications and of moving things around. It's all it's very smart.
Yeah. There's a method to the madness, and I just love it when good game design meets like good theme, and it's just like beautiful. Chef's kiss.
Agree. So when it comes to Renegade games, then, I mean, obviously you love Lanterns, but are there any other Renegade games that you really love, and what do you love about them?
Yeah, so actually probably top 3 board games of all time. Like whenever anybody asks me like, what is your favorite like strategy game? I always say Raiders of the North Sea. It's such like there's layers to it, right? So like if you want to play it casually and kind of give yourself an introductory mode of worker placement, I love the fact that you have the place a worker, pick a worker, because there's always something to do. So it doesn't have that cutthroatness of like other worker placement games where you're like trying to block people and all that. So But then if you look deeper into it, there's like resource management, and then there's also hand management and card play, multi-use cards. And it's one of those games like you can play super competitive, like if you're around your hardcore gamer friends, or if you wanted to introduce somebody to a lighter strategy game and kind of get them into it, you can treat it either way. And of course, the Miko's art is awesome on that game. It's stunning, it's striking. And then all the expansions that come with it too, the Fields of Fame and Hall of Heroes, I think.
Yeah.
Those two expansions, again, you can add the Fields of Fame adds like the Jarls, which adds a little bit more combat if you like the raiding part of things. And then the Hall of Heroes has like the face-up market, so it kind of reduces a little bit of randomness. And then also with the mead, like introducing mead into a Viking game is brilliant. And then you get the mead tokens, and then I don't know. It's just there's so many layers to it, and especially if you play with the expansions, where if you're going out for a quest, it now makes your hand just as important as the crew that you're playing down. So there's just so many different pathways to victory, and it's an awesome game with all the different the point tracks with the Valkyrie track, and then the Fame track if you get that, or just the regular point track. So it's one of those games where I can't love it enough, because every time I play, even though the mechanics are the same, I always have a different experience if maybe I'll go super heavy into one strategy or another.
Yeah, 100%. I can totally see that. And the thing that I also love is like, even when you're talking about the visuals, like even going beyond the art, just in terms of the visual design of that game, one of the things that I love is kind of the progression that you have. Like it really has this really amazing ramp up where at first you're like, oh, it's very good at introducing new things in a way that feels very manageable, so that whether you're a new gamer or an experienced gamer, there's enough going on for you to be like, oh, this isn't too much, but it's just right. So it'll be like, I have this little bit of stuff down here. And then as you move up the map and you're kind of raiding and going across, it's like, there's so many other things for you to look at. And now you're like, ooh, so if I wanted to do this, okay, so if I do this, I can now go over here, but then that means I can't go over there. And you get like all these choices, which I love. So yeah.
Yeah, it's so cool the way that the map was designed, that like you're moving. So the more that you raid, the more powerful you become. So then the workers change out. And again, just kind of like that small little thing where like the basic worker is really good at the silversmith, but the workers later on that you might recruit as warriors, they're not as good as at the silversmith.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and I'm just like.
It's like that trade out of like, which do you want to go for? Yeah. And that cool thing too of like, that like you obviously you're like, okay, well, this is Raiders of the North Sea, so obviously I want to go on raids. So at the beginning, the thing I love is the first time I played that game, I was like, oh, so how do I go? Like, I need to go raid this. How do I get up there? People were like, you have to wait. We have to like get stuff. And I'm like literally grabbing everything, like preparing for a raid. And you literally feel like a person just with like a backpack who's like, you come with me and I'm going to grab this because we're going to take that over there. And it's like so exciting.
You're like I'm coming over here for some provisions, and I'm going to make sure I'm strong enough, and I'm going to recruit these people, and let's go raid.
It's so funny too when I play it, because I obviously enjoy the raiding as well, but it's almost to the point that I initially, when I first played it, was like, oh, I'm so excited to raid, that when I went back and played it the next time, I realized how much fun I actually had, though, just even during that first part where you're getting ready. And I was like, maybe I even like just preparing for raids better than actual raids.
Right. Yeah. Again, it's one of those games, like the more that you play, the more you can just explore different avenues and stuff.
Yeah. And so many different paths.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah. And then like with all the expansions, adding in like new cards and different villagers that come in, it's again,
so many options. Yeah, definitely feel that. That's great. And when it comes to sort of moving from, playing games and loving them, and it sounds to me like a lot of what got you into content creation was the community. So what was that transition like for you? And was it a transition, or was it just a thing that like people kept coming to you being like, oh, I need to know about this, and then you just ended up becoming the content creation guy?
So when I started off playing games, it was probably a good year before I even thought about content creation, but I did go online to try to find that community, and that's where I started my Twitter. Just because, you know, it's one of those things, if you can't connect in person, then you can probably find people online. So Twitter was a really good resource for me. And then of course, Board Game Geek, I use that more as like a research type deal. But yeah, Twitter is kind of where I found my tight knit group of friends that I could just blabber on and on about board gamings, right? So, but the reason I kind of got into content creation was the more that I got into gaming, the more I was just like, how come I don't see myself in these content creators, right? Like they're producing awesome content, but I didn't see anybody like myself represented. And it was just, you know, I was brand new to the hobby. I had not been to any conventions or anything. It was just everything that I saw online. So it was one of those moments where it was one of those, like, if you don't see it, maybe you should start creating it. So I dove headfirst in to try to be at least provide some visibility of someone who's queer, and then someone who also, you know, is Asian American. So maybe we can connect on those levels as well as board gaming. And then, you know, I think when I first started all this, it was still, again, it was a primarily white male dominated area where content creation was primarily just YouTube as well. Like everything was like, YouTube was considered like the king of, like, the gold standard of content creation. And I was like, well, I think, you know, even if I can't provide like hardcore analysis of a game, I can tell you why I like it, and that could be beneficial. You know, someone might not be able to resonate with those people, but they might be able to resonate with me. And honestly, anybody that gets into content creation, the goal is to, you know, scream at the top of our lungs about how amazing board gaming is and what it can provide. And it's not just about, you know, marketing for these publishers, but it's also about, like, you know, escapism and, you know, all these different ways to mentally stretch yourself, or, you know, to have a date night. So there's all these different values that go into content creation, where you're just like, if I can provide this for somebody else, I think it'll be worth it. And then I think, again, just kind of coming in, definitely not at ground level. There's definitely been more diverse creators before me, but I think something clicked where I was able to just kind of snowball my voice into the board game content creation. And it just kind of, you know, blew up. Like, I didn't realize that whatever I was doing, I honestly still don't know what I'm doing with content creation. But just the things that I created, the way that I guess present things. Again, I'm a board game enthusiast first and foremost. So whenever I talk about games, I'm just like 0 to 100. Like, let's talk about games. Let's talk about how amazing they are. So I think that within that space, it was needed. And then from there, I was just like, well, hey, if I'm a marginalized creator, maybe my platform is to just help raise voices of friends and other marginalized creators. And that kind of became a part of my brand, where I just wanted to be a hype man for people that wanted to get into content creation, that wanted to share their work, that wanted to work within the industry. And yeah, it just kind of snowballed into Danny Plays Gamez now. You know, it's became a place, like, it's definitely a mutually beneficial relationship, because like the community that has kind of flourished on Twitter and just through meeting people at conventions, it's amazing, right? So some of my best friends now are content creators and people that I've just met through board gaming, and it's awesome.
I love that. That's so great. And I think that you're right. That is so important to, when you're watching content and you're like, hey, like, this is great, but like, I'm not really represented in this, and yet here I am in this hobby. So what's up with that? And like, kind of being like, why don't we just change that? It's the other cool thing too of it's so interesting in gaming because you're right. It was very much like that. It was very much like a straight white male dominated in terms of content creation area and industry. And it's so interesting. Not that there's anything wrong with being a straight white male, but it's just like, hey, there's girls at the table too. Hey, there's people that are queer identifying. Hey, there's people from all different backgrounds here at this table. So like, why are we here being like, look at this game and look what I love, and being proud to show that off. So I think that's really important, and kudos to you for saying, hey, I'm going to actually stand up and try to change this and be this. Yeah, that's awesome.
It's been such a blast because, again, it's opened a lot of different doors and opportunities to be able to go to these conventions and, talk about inclusion and diversity within a gaming space. And then, like I said, I've met some of my best friends through gaming now. And I still feel like I'm relatively new to content creation.
How long have you been doing it for?
I've only been doing this for maybe about 2 years. Years-ish.
That's so crazy because I remember meeting you like a couple years ago at a convention.
Yeah.
What was I doing? I was working for Luma at the convention and I was demoing games for them. And I remember you came up and you wanted to chat to someone that also worked for Luma. Anyways, we met, and I remember when you came up with your card and everything, and I was like, this he knows what's up. Like, you 100% present and sell as like someone who like, you know everything, like you got this, like you were just so confident and so smiley. And I was just like, this guy's a big deal. I better go get someone.
I actually do remember that now.
Yeah. It was a while ago, but I think it was maybe 2 years ago or a year ago.
Yeah. Time is
what is time now?
What is time anymore?
So true. But yeah, so it's so funny that you say like, I'm so new, but to me, you've never presented as new. Like you feel like you've always been here and always been gaming. So
yeah, I appreciate it. And again, it was one of those things where I was like, I started off just demoing for companies as well at conventions, while still trying to create content, because I was like, if this can be my way to meet publishers and then meet other content creators, and I have to work for a company and, just demo games that I love, hey, why not? And then that turned into being able to see the back end of things at conventions. And then it also showed me, different marketing and how conventions work, and, being front facing and talking to consumers about games, and, like what are people looking for? Because you've demoed games before. Like, how do you capture the attention of someone there's literally so hundreds of other games, right? And then you have you learn, and then you're able to apply that as well to your own brand and your own social marketing and stuff too. So yeah, it all kind of works together, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. And that's that it's so interesting because it's a great job demoing games because it's super fun to do. And if you love games, it's like, oh my gosh, you get to like teach people games that I'm excited about. Okay, that's all right. I guess if I have to, like, it feels so good. Yeah. But then, it's so true. And you get to meet everybody that's in the industry from sort of all different areas, as well as get to connect with people that are also gamers. So overall, it's just like, oh, okay, I'm meeting everyone that I need to meet now, and I'm in the place I need to be. Would you recommend that people that want to get into content creation or, become like sort of gaming influencers, start with demoing, or do you have any advice for those people? And were there any challenges when you were getting into it that you were like, oh, like I love this, but like I have this thing, and like, how do I like get over this hurdle?
Yeah. So I guess when we talk about diversity and inclusion, we have to talk about accessibility and barriers to entry as well. So if you have the opportunity to demo for people or for companies, I think that's a good way to do it, but it's definitely not the only way, because it definitely, they're long days, you're working with people, it's draining. So if you're not extroverted and you're not a people person, it can be a big, energy drain, and it might not be if that's your personality, 100% do it, because usually there's compensation, whether it be like a badge, you get paid, you get a room, et cetera, et cetera. So there are benefits to doing so. You get games, of course. But yeah, I think the main advice I would give someone that's just starting off in content creation, it'd probably be twofold. Create what you love, right? I think content creation is a form of art. It's definitely, it's one of those things, like, you're creating, right? You shouldn't demean what you're doing. So you have to kind of do what you love. If you force something, you can only force yourself so long until you kind of teeter out, or there's some burnout. But so create what you love, but also be inspired by other creators as well. I think you being able to be friends with amazing creators and observe and see how people present things and their perspective of things and how they perceive games. I think being inspired by that, so kind of almost creating content that you love to consume. I think that's one of those things. Or collaborating. I think collaborating is one of those things where it's a little underutilized in board game content creation. And I think that's something that needs to be tapped in, because I guess another piece of advice is try not to see other people as competition, because I know for board game content creation, it can be like, oh, I need to get the hotness first. I need to get that content out there. I need the views. I need the clicks, et cetera, et cetera. But if you can create content that you love and it's inspired, or even better, if you're collaborating with somebody else to tell that story, I think that will be a lot more sustainable than just trying to always get the newest title and pump out, all these hot titles, and you kind of burn out. So that's kind of my advice. Try not to get locked into that gold standard of YouTube. Like, when I started, I thought YouTube was the only way to do it, right? Like, I thought to feel credible within the industry, you have to have a YouTube channel where you stand in front of your Calyx shelves full of board games and introduce yourself, and then do a top-down view. And it might be a gold standard for these content creators that have been doing it for a while and kind of pioneered that type of review, but that's not the only way to do things now. You have Twitter, Instagram. If photography is your thing, Instagram is a huge platform where publishers now are looking at Instagram and how you can be an influencer there. Or again, community building on Twitter, and just talking about those micro influences of micro reviews of games. Publishers are now starting to see, especially within the marketing and the growth of board gaming. I think as we keep growing, the industry is just growing. I think we're finally realizing that if you want to succeed, you might have to diversify in the type of marketing that you're doing. So yeah, you can go that route of YouTube, but there's so many other social media platforms. And I think that's been proven, especially now, being in a pandemic where people are quarantined. There's so many different avenues to get information that YouTube is, yes, a good way, but there's all these other ways. So find that thing that clicks with you. And if you don't know what clicks with you, just try things. Like, I'm still trying things. I might have a stint of a brilliant idea, and then I'm just like, maybe not, and then try something else. Because again, you build an audience that not looks up to you, but they're looking towards you, not for the end all be all opinions of board games, but they want to see what you're talking about. They care about your voice. So that's kind of the biggest thing, is don't get in your head. I'm definitely a person that gets in my head about views and followers and all that. But I think if you create something that you love and that you're proud of, then you can't lose. But yeah, the challenges of content creations is to try, like, you don't take breaks, I guess.
Yes.
Because when you're starting off, you're so excited, and it's always good to have that excitement and have that enthusiasm, but it can become overwhelming, especially if you're trying to crank out, people talk about like trying to figure out the algorithm, whether it be on Instagram or YouTube. And it's like the algorithm, like we don't actually know what the algorithm is. Like, do we need to post every day? Do we need to, comment on everything? Like, who knows? So
I always say like the algorithm is what works for you. Like,
exactly.
don't worry about these people's algorithms. Like, what's your algorithm?
Exactly. Like, what are you going to be able to sustain the content creation? But then also, like, again, bring it back. Like, why did you start creating content? Like, because you love gaming. Don't make it something that you dread doing because you have to get this post out on this day, So I think that would be something to just think about when you're creating content. Like, what's sustainable, what's fun, and what's a good point of view that you can bring that you might not have seen yet.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think what you said too about collaborating is so underrated in our industry, and is something that I'm waiting for these big waves, because I feel like I also feel when I content create with people, I'm just more creative. Like, because you are ping ponging, and because you're like, oh, I've never seen it like that. Oh yeah, if we do that, but then what if we sprinkle in some of this? And someone's like, oh, I didn't think about that. And it's like this melding of minds where you have like creative explosions. Yeah. So that stuff feels great. And it's funny because why do we play games? I mean, it's community. Mm-hmm. And yet when we make content, we're like, oh, I'm going to be like this cookie cutter one thing, just me. But it's like, no one's ever just me when they're playing a game. Like, I'm never just very rarely, other than obviously before we started this, we were talking a bit about solo gaming. So then I am just me. But
there's nothing wrong with solo gaming.
Yeah. But for the most part, we're here in the community because even if you're a solo gamer, you're here to connect in some way with yourself or with other people through gaming. So that's very underrated.
Agreed.
Yeah. So we're about just over the halfway point. So I want to drop in that code word for everybody so you can get your hands on some sweet, sweet Lanterns Harvest Festival, because this game is great. And if you haven't played it yet, it's honestly one of my favorite games because it's just so accessible for everyone. Like, I have yet to show this game to someone who has been like, oh, no, I don't like that. Everyone loves it. And even people that have never played a board game before, this is a really great gateway game for those people. So our code word today is inspired by Danny, and it is meatball.
I love it.
So that is the code word. And also, speaking of Danny, if you have any questions for Danny or I, we are going to be answering some questions near the end of the show. So feel free to plug those in the chat now or as they come up, and we will be getting to them shortly. So yeah. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about board gaming. We've talked a little bit about content creation, but I know earlier this year you had your first foray into RPGs, tabletop RPGs.
Yes.
Which is very exciting. And I watched your video on your first campaign and your adventures and what your team was up to. By the way, it sounds like you all had a lot of fun playing together. Was there anyone else that was new, or were you the only like new person?
I was the only new person. So it was a random, again, the amazingness of Twitter. It was a random thing where I was like, I really want to get into RPGs. Like, I want to try some sort of RPGs, but I think I would feel more comfortable if I were playing with a queer group. That way, the safety systems are set in place. We kind of understand. So I just put out a tweet there if there's any queer people that want to play, and lo and behold, people responded, and like within 2 or 3 weeks, we started that campaign. And
that's so great.
Yeah, and of course, it just spiraled into just the love, like as with anything, love and weirdness, right? Yeah. So now it's just like more and more, just I'm like head first into RPGs, and it's weird because I feel like I have so much of a better grasp. So I guess it was a cool feeling to know that, like, at the beginning of the year, I had no experience. I was that person that was like, can I do this? Like, am I able to play RPGs? Like, am I able to get into something that seems so complex and scary? And then by the end of the year, I'm just like, hey, I've been there before, and if I can do it, you can do it. And if you don't like this system, maybe try this one. Or if you don't like something about this, you have this one. But I think if anybody's listening to this and hasn't played RPGs or is kind of like scared, it's like RPGs are really, it's about storytelling. It's about hanging out with your friends and just telling this epic story. Wherever you
Yeah.
want to take it. If you want it to be super emotional, let it be that. If you want to just wreck things and go, save the world, you can do that. And it's a beautiful thing. And I wish I did get into it sooner. But hey, better late than never. And yeah, I'm so far into the RPG community now on Twitter that I'll I can't ever turn around.
Yeah, no, that's great though. And also with you focusing on indie RPGs, I think that's super cool. Because I think the thing that a lot of people don't realize when they get into RPG gaming is like, they think there's like one thing. They think there's like, oh, there's Dungeons and Dragons and like maybe you know about Pathfinder and you're like, oh, that's like it. And it's like,
Mhm.
no, 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 no. That
Yeah,
isn't even scratching the surface, really. That's like some extra stuff that's over there, but like there's a whole closet of stuff and stuff that is very, very easy to play. Like
mhm.
you and very non-committal and very like you can just tap into this, tap out. There's almost no rules, so you can just sit and tell a story and that's the end. Very easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, growing up, I mean, I had older cousins that would play and we would play with them, but we never played, by the rules. Like it was like, I want to create this barbarian and we're just gonna roll dice and pretty much do whatever, because I mean, we were younger.
Yeah.
So finding a system like D&D, because it is definitely more mainstream now than ever.
Yes.
Um, and I think it's a good thing that people can see D&D on that front of like, yeah, it is fun and you can play with your friends and anybody can do it. But the fifth edition I know has cleared some things up, but D&D for sure, out of all the other indie RPGs that I've played, D&D is definitely more rules heavy, which isn't a
Mhm.
bad thing. If you like that type of stuff and you like to get into the lore and there's all these different homebrews and you like to roll all your different dice from D4s to D20s to D100s, I think D&D is perfect for that. And I was one of those people that you mentioned that was like, I thought D&D was like the end all be all. Like when I
Mhm.
heard tabletop RPGs, I thought everybody was playing D&D.
Yeah.
Um,
Which is
so I'm
super normal. That's what
yeah,
everyone thinks, right? Yeah.
yeah. And then the more that I got into the community and just kind of read of like how, if you want, like you said, if you want something a little bit simpler, here's this system. If you like the idea of, kind of the Cthulhu realm, try this one. If you like
Yeah.
to just story tell and just sit around the table and just tell stories with your friends, there's this one. And it's been a really, really cool. And of course, these are indie games that may not have eyes on it, so being able to have a platform that I have and to be able to just again scream at the top of my lungs like, hey, check out this one, I just played this, I think you would like it. It's been really cool.
Is there anything that you've been playing lately that you have been like, this is the thing everyone needs in their life?
I was a guest at Roll20 Con, and we
Mhm.
played Harlem Unbound, which is a Call of
Mm.
Cthulhu game. And Harlem Unbound, uh, his name's Chris. His last name is escaping me, but he is a black writer, and he is kind of taken that Cthulhu theme and kind of stripped it of its racist roots and kind of flipped it upside down and gave it the perspective of what it would be like from a black perspective. And that was probably one of the most eye-opening, and like, I don't know, it's just really cool to see someone so brilliant to take a system that might have those racist roots to kind of make it their own and be like, I'm not going to stray away from this theme just because of some old racist dead guy, I'm going to make it my own. I was like, heck yeah. And I was able to play with some brilliant black and creators of all different backgrounds, and that was probably one of the coolest things. So Harlem Unbound, if y'all haven't heard of it, check that out. And then for I played on a charity stream recently called F Cancer Roll Dice, and I played through the quest system. And
Uh-huh.
that one, I fell in love with the quest system. So of course I went online and bought everything. But yeah, it was one of those systems that it walks you through character creation, so it's not so intimidating. It allows you to, start off baby steps. So it almost kind of gives you like a tutorial feel of the video game when you're reading through the pamphlets. So that was a really good, like I wanted to, this is a system that I could introduce to my work friends without getting them intimidated with like bringing out all my monster manuals and stuff with D&D.
Yeah.
So
wow, those both sound really good. I just wrote them down, so it was like,
yeah,
I need to play these. These both sound great. Also, I just love. Does F Cancer have like sets of dice? Like, do they have their own dice that they sell with that RPG?
Oh no, so that one, so F Cancer Roll Dice was they were raising money for that specific organization. So that was the name of the charity stream. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Cool. Yeah, because I feel like it's just as soon as you mention dice and anything, I'm always like, I need more dice. I mean, I don't need more dice, but I need more dice.
We all need more dice.
We all need more dice. It's true. You can never have too many until you are literally like, I can't get in my house because I have too many dice. That's the only time. So true. That's really cool. And when it comes to video games as well, like you kind of do everything. Like this is I just feel like you're a gamer through and through. It's like every form of games. There's no holds barred there. And the thing that I really love about that, to be honest, is that people seem to think when you're a gamer that you are like you've one thing. And I also play like RPGs, board games, and video games. It started with board games and video games when I was younger, and quickly as a teenager moved into RPGs and then kind of just did everything. But I've run into so many people who are like, oh, you like board games, that's you. And I'm like, well, I also play these games. And like, oh, but you like video games? So which one do you like? And I'm like, all yes. But when it comes to all those different types of games, there's a lot of things that they have in common, but a lot of things that are also different about them. So I was just wondering, for you, how do you feel about those gaming experiences in terms of their differences and their similarities? And do you have like an area that you tend to gravitate more towards? Or do you feel like for you as well, it's kind of like all three all the time, now that you've found everything?
Yeah. I definitely think I think video gaming for me over the years has become kind of like my solo experience. So if I can't get a game going on, I can always, flip on my Switch, go on Animal Crossing. I know we were talking about that.
Yeah.
Or Smash Bros, So that's kind of like something like if I'm by myself, I usually gravitate towards video gaming.
Okay.
It's easy. You can turn it on. There's no setup. You can just play. Board gaming has provided me kind of that social interaction, a reason to hang out, a reason to get excited about, the newest games, and, share that experience around the table away from the TV and the screens that we're on. But now, knowing that RPGs, like kind of diving headfirst into the RPGs, but then also, again, it's a weird, unprecedented time with COVID and all that. Like I've been doing RPGs and board gaming online, and some of the board gaming online are almost like app integrations or video game integrations. So I think everything kind of, it does overlap, and I'm super glad for it, because again, I guess my goal as a content creator is to share the love of gaming and to have, as many kind voices and people that are just as excited as me, so I can play with more people, right? So it's one of those things where I think board gaming is kind of where I started. I kind of kept my love of video games on the side, because that would be something that I did by myself, and then RPGs are the newer thing. But as I'm kind of still finding my voice and still finding like what I want to talk about through my own social media platforms, I think they all have a place in gaming. And like you said, like it's cool that if you have a specialty, that's your thing. But I think as with board gaming, like I think there's a board game for everyone. Like if you don't think you're a board gamer, I think you just haven't found it yet, or you haven't found someone to introduce it to you yet. Same with video gaming and RPGs, right? So I think it's what if we're growing one industry, I think we're all kind of hovering around each other in the different video game industries. And I've the more that I've gotten into board gaming, the more I've been able to meet illustrators that have illustrated for maybe a campaign for an RPG, who's also worked on a video game, who is now a graphic designer for a game. And then same with like designers, like there's, I don't know, it's just a huge, there's enough enthusiasm in gaming for everybody. So yeah, I don't know if I could pinpoint where I'm at on that spectrum, but yeah,
it sounds like you're kind of all of them again.
Yeah, if I'm excited about something, you'll definitely hear me talking about it.
That's awesome. And I mean, I think you're definitely right when it comes to like why we make content. I think what it should come back to ultimately is I make content about this because I love this and I want to celebrate this and I want to connect people with this. Like I want to share this with you. That's why I'm making content about it. And when it comes to sort of creating that energy as well, and creating that energy of just positivity and sort of like this very welcoming, very bubbly and like charismatic energy, you have that, and it's so great to watch. And the other thing that I love about that is that it really is about like, I want to share this with everyone. And it's also about making sure that everyone feels included in that message, in that sharing. And I know you've been very vocal about inclusion when it comes to gaming and making sure like everyone has a place at the table, everyone feels comfortable, everyone feels safe. I think that's so important, especially as time goes on, because I do feel like in the past we've been like kind of living in the dark ages for a long time. And it's like now the sun is shining in. And it's also an interesting thing in our industry because most of the people that I run into that don't even necessarily have that inclusion, it's not because they're against the inclusion. Like everyone I've talked to has been like, hey, wouldn't it be nice if we had more of this? Or like if we added some of this? Everyone's always like, yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Can we do that? Like, will you help? Can we all do this together? And I'm like, yeah. So can you talk a little bit more about for you, what inclusivity and diversity means and just why you think they're so important to the industry and just for everyone?
Yeah, for sure. I'll echo everything you just said, but I think that's the only way that our industry and our communities will grow, is that if we don't have that intention to make sure that there's a safe space for people to come into the community, like there's no point in it, especially if, like, I guess you can see it from a consumer standpoint, or someone that works within the industry. Like you want to be able to grow that base to keep it exciting, yes, and keep it growing, yes, but the safety and the amount of, like, you have to be able to put that amount of energy to make sure voices are heard. If something is offensive, if something is, tone deaf, if something is, might be ignorance where you don't know, like, like it's one of those things, like if you don't put in the energy to learn and grow and, follow what's going on, especially in nowadays, like you said, we were kind of stuck in the dark ages for a bit before people started speaking up. And it's not that the like queer people or people of color or neurodivergent people weren't a part of gaming. It's just now it's become almost a place where we do feel safer talking about, hey, this is a problem. Are you going to help change it? Are you going to be able to adapt and learn? Or if not, why are you fighting it? Like, let's have that conversation. Why can't we change things for the better? So I think it's become that tipping point where we are able to, hype up other voices. We are seeing more designers, more illustrators, more content creators, more people that have these voices and these places of power where they can start changing things, not just changing things to change things, but to change things to make more people feel included. So when we talk about diversity and inclusion, it isn't just say, hey, throw a female character in there. It's like, how about, we create a character that actually represents the audience that we're going for, right? So being able to be a part of a community that do have these diversity consults where, if you're creating a game about Chinese culture, instead of having someone that is Italian, you can reach out to someone that is actually within that culture, and you can pay them and you can talk to them about their culture and how do we make this, we want to appreciate your culture, not appropriate it. And I think being able to see that more and more, I think we're definitely taking the right step in the right direction. And again, I said it before, but it's board gaming is for everybody. And it's, when we're trying to gatekeep and push people away for whatever reason, we need to ask that question of like, why is that there, and what can we do to make it not there, right? Because it's gaming is that form of escapism. Everybody deserves to have that feeling of having fun with friends, going into a different dimension, finding this theme, finding this mechanic that burns your brain, but you want to play it over and over. Like, everybody is able to experience that. So how can we as content creators, how can we as people that have a voice, how do we uplift other voices that might want to break into the industry, that want to design games but might not know where to start? Like, what are we doing? And I've seen so many designers and groups starting to pop up, indie game designer group coalitions, where it's so cool to see like my friends spearheading these initiatives. And again, I'm just their hype man. I'm here to do whatever I can to keep pushing that envelope of diversity, inclusion, safety, especially, hopefully, fingers crossed, once COVID goes away and conventions are coming back, like safety within conventions, all those things. When we talk about diversity, inclusion, it's not just throwing a trope into a game and saying, oh yeah, you can see a Black person in that game. No, it's hiring people to have a meaningful impact in the gaming industry so that we can keep growing as a community. And it's I'm very hopeful, just seeing like the amazingness of like my friends just doing things and seeing companies actually making the right moves to make their employees more diverse. And again, it's just growing and growing and growing. And I'm stoked to see like where our board gaming, our tabletop industry can go from there.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And that is such a nice sort of note to finish that answer off on, the idea of we are seeing that movement, and it's so uplifting in a lot of ways. And it's really about making sure that people, I think, feel comfortable in the space, and inclusivity, like you said, not just as like a token, as like a gesture. It's more about like actually incorporating this into like, what is this about? Like, this isn't about like, oh, just like a little sprinkle of something. It's like, this needs to now be a story for everyone. So
Exactly.
how do we do that?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Cool. Well, I would love to see if we have any questions in the chat. So I'm gonna ask Desiree.
We do.
Oh, amazing.
Actually.
Amazing.
All right. So let's see here. There's a few questions. So when you were talking, Danny, about one of your favorite games, Raiders of the North Sea, someone was asking if you've tried the Rune Saga version, which combines all the North Sea games.
Yeah, of course I have. Yeah, I love that idea of having that Rune Saga. So if y'all aren't familiar, it's a trilogy of games. So you start off with Shipwrights, which is like a hand management kind of drafting game where you're building. So it tells a whole story, and I'm super excited to tell it. So Shipwrights of the North Sea, you're building your ships and you're making these ships and you're drafting these cards. So you have the drafting mechanic on that. You play through it. And then going to the next one, it's Raiders of the North Sea, where you're taking these ships, and you can see all this in the art too. So you can see the ships kind of going out and raiding these villages and stuff. And then the third one in the trilogy is Explorers of the North Sea, which is like a tile laying game, pick up and deliver. So after you've kind of raided and kind of taken over the area and, you know, built this kind of society, now you get to go explore the world, and you're racing to get these livestock and all that. So yeah, the Rune Saga is awesome because it adds kind of like little game objectives. So it almost kind of, again, pulls from like the video game thing, where like if you're able to, you know, have X amount of strength in raiders, you'll get a bonus for explorers. So it kind of gives like little incentives to do specific things, and then at the end of the Rune Saga, you kind of have one big winner, but it pulls from the other games too. So yes, another chef's kiss, brilliant.
That's awesome. All right. And so, Danny, what have you been playing a lot of during lockdown? And do you play games on Tabletopia or Tabletop Simulator?
So I actually don't use either of those if I don't have to. So I've been on a couple streams where I have to use those, but the finickiness of those open sandbox games I don't use. I actually use Board Game Arena, which it has definitely a smaller game collection on there, but they've turned it almost into like a turn-based system where they have all the games loaded. You don't have to set anything up. You don't have to worry about like accidentally flipping the table or, you know, unshuffling the cards or whatever. So Board Game Arena is what I've spent a lot of my time on, and I've been playing a lot of Welcome to on there. I've been playing Clans of Caledonia when I want like a super like heavy game. I've been playing King Domino a lot. And just recently with friends, just kind of offline or, you know, virtually, we played a game called Monstrosity, which is a drawing game. I think it's recently released, and I think you can buy it now, but it's a game published by Deepwater Game, but designed by Eric Slauson. And he's a newer designer, but yeah, it's a hilarious game where you're drawing these bonker monsters, and you only have like 20 seconds to look at this elaborate monster, and then you have to describe it for people, and they only have 2 minutes to describe it, and they're asking questions, and you're trying to describe it as best as you can. And then yeah, it's brilliant.
Sounds like a winner to me.
Yeah, so good.
All right. And then how can we continue to uplift voices in the industry in 2021?
Yeah, I think that's going to be a community effort. You know, the more like everybody, as content creators, everybody has their own audiences, and I don't see a problem with sharing audiences. So the more that we can, we have to, when we're talking about uplifting voices, we have to be intentional with that motion. So it's not just, you know, retweeting something because it's Black History Month or retweeting something because it's Pride Month. It's actively on a day-to-day basis, if you're able to, consuming content from the people that you think their voices are important to, you know, amplify what they're saying on a day-to-day basis. So it is going to be something that we as a community have to work on together. But again, like I was saying, like the more that I'm able to spend time within that community, I think we're doing a great job already. But yeah, I think if you can take one thing away, be intentional with the people that you support. You know, there's a lot of content out there. So if you can't hop on to every stream, or you can't watch every video or like every post, that's fine. But when you're able to, definitely take the time out to amplify those voices and be intentional with how you're supporting them. And then also, you know, just making sure them as humans are okay as well, you know, just checking in on them for putting themselves out there, and, you know, just again, creating that safe space for them as well.
Awesome. Thank you. And then let's see. What do you think about the online gaming convention experience? We've had a lot of online conventions this year. So have you attended any, and do you like any, or did you like any?
Yeah, what was that like?
Yeah, I've attended and I've worked, and it's the best that we can do for now, right? So it's a new thing that everybody is experiencing together. I think we were trying to do the most that we could with like Discord rooms and publisher halls, and it just didn't. I don't know. The amazing part about conventions is being able to meet people and share those moments with maybe random strangers that become new friends. And because we're kind of stuck in this social media realm, and not to take away the validity of what social media provides, I think it was just an extension of social media. So these conventions didn't give that feeling or excitement of going into a convention hall and seeing things, and even waiting in line for the game that you really want. It's just a click away if you wanted to order a game. So I think we did the best that we could as an industry and as a community. But I think people are going to be itching to get back into conventions, and I hope for sure things are safe enough, and that we're smart as a community and as an industry to make sure that everything is safe and cleared before conventions start back up. But I for sure think people are really, really wanting that physical convention.
It's really hard when you have that thing too of even just like, because in social media we also kind of bubble a little. So we also tend to, it's hard to push those boundaries to be like, oh, who is that person? Oh, I don't know this person, so I'm gonna go. But when you're at a convention hall, it's hard to like get away from people you don't know. So like you'll just run into someone and be like, oh, that's cool. And then all of a sudden you just met someone, and you can't do that online. That's the hard part.
Right.
Yeah.
And then one final question. Danny, how has your fitness routine changed during lockdown?
It's actually gotten a little bit better. So I bought a house during lockdown, which was a wild ride, but I have a little shed in the back. So I actually have my own little home gym. So it's been good. It hasn't changed much other than less variety, I guess, that I would get in my, so it, I guess a little bit of background in my professional life. In one of my professional jobs, I'm a health and wellness coordinator. So I work within a gym, like a corporate gym. So on the flip side, I'm still teaching and I'm still doing personal training virtually. So my physical activity hasn't been able, like it's been all inside, and we have to use like, if my clients didn't have weights, we would be using like laundry detergent and milk jugs and grocery bags filled with things. So that's been a kind of a hurdle, but yeah, fitness routine's still good. Still got my barbells, and still trying to do some yoga to make sure that my lower back doesn't get too tight from sitting down all day. So make sure you're stretching and staying hydrated. That's my public health PSA.
It's pretty good advice, I think.
Awesome. Well, it looks like those are all the questions for tonight.
All right. Okay. Well, this has been so delightful. Thank you so much for joining me, Danny. It was really nice to kind of like connect with you like a little bit more, and I've been following your stuff on social, and everyone should also still, even though I know you don't have as active as the thing right now on YouTube, everyone should still check out your YouTube, because it is also just super great and cute, and there's so much awesome energy there. So yeah, and your Instagram is like fire. It's really good.
Thank you.
Yeah. But yes, thank you so much for joining me. And before we head out, I am going to remind you all of some things very quickly. Danny, first, can you remind us of sort of who you are, where you are, and where we can find you and your work online, so that people can come and follow you on all the things?
Yeah, for sure. First and foremost, just follow me on Twitter at Danny Plays Games with a Z. That's probably where I put in a lot of my time, just building that community, and hopefully from there you can be able to check out my other content, but then also find content of other marginalized creators that are, just as excited about gaming as I am. I'm also on TikTok. I am trying to figure out that and how to incorporate that within the board game and tabletop industry. And again, we are always trying to find the algorithm, but we don't know what TikTok's algorithm is on a marketing standpoint just yet.
Yeah.
And then if you want to follow me on some RPG escapades, again, you can follow at @off_the table, where I am playing in a Monster of the Week campaign.
All right. Well, that all sounds great. And I definitely need to also follow you on TikTok. I feel like TikTok is such a journey, though. It really is this. I'm still figuring it out too, so I'm with you. we can struggle through it together as tabletop content creators and try to figure it out.
Let's do it. I'll just duet everything that you.
Yeah, we'll just duet with each other.
Back
I was
and
gonna
forth.
say. I really want to do duets at some point though with tabletop, where it's like we're kind of like pretending we're still like playing a game or like doing things together. Especially some of those physical. Yeah, like especially some of those physical games, like what's that one? There's like one where you have to like hold cards with like your body parts. I don't know how I would do it, but it's called Funny Bones, I want to say. I don't know if I'm making this up. I think it's a really old game. Desiree is like looking at me like, what is this game? But you guys can look it up and tell me if I'm lying or not, but I think it's called Funny Bones. But yes, we should definitely duet. Yes, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you everyone for joining us. And before we go, quick little things. So we do have the Alice is Missing RPG, which is out now. Really, you should check this game out. It is very emotional. It is very real, and it is something you can actually play through text. So it is a really good game for the times that we are in right now. And then we've also got the Altered Carbon RPG, which is not out yet, but you can pre-order that. We do have Duel of Wands, Kids on Brooms card game, which you can play with the RPG Kids on Brooms, or you can play it as a standalone, which is really beautiful art by Heather Vaughn. We've also got Luke Minch and Doug Lewandowski designing that, who are both amazing. And we also have some content still coming your way, but we are going to be gone for 2 weeks. So keep an eye out, because there is still the More Phenomenal Mondays with Daddy Louie. But like I said, we'll be on holidays. So you can keep an eye on our socials, where we will have lots of fun content for you. And when we are back, make sure you are still following us so that you don't miss the content that we have in January for you. Thank you everybody for being here. Before we go, one more time, that giveaway word inspired by Danny and all of his glorious beefy meatiness is meatball. So you can click the link that Desiree gives you in the chat, and you can enter that there. And you could win your own copy of Lanterns Harvest Festival, which, like I said, if you haven't played it, you need to play it. You need to own it. Just trust me. All right, friends, thank you so much for joining us. And I hope everybody has a safe and happy holidays. I will see you all in January. And thank you so much again, Danny, for joining us. And thank you, Desiree. Yeah. And thank you, Desiree, for producing as well over there on the side. You can't see her, but she's there. Awesome. All right, friends, remember to play your game. We'll see you next time.
Bye.